Well, this seems to be as good a place to start as any. Hello, my name is Lance Wolf, and this is Iron Wolf Productions, and this is the Scythe. The Scythe was designed back in the 90s, and it's one of my more unique designs, I feel. Using the laws of parsimony, both economically and philosophically, goes into all my designs. And at the time, the philosophy was that instead of building a capital ship, to build a smaller ship so you could put more in it, economically, And through the laws of parsimony, meaning the simplest avenue would be the best, which is to just make this thing a ridiculously powerful warship. And when I designed it back in the 90s, I left it back then when I cranked out a bunch of drawings. Usually it was just a profile of the drawing is all I actually needed. And from there, not much went into the design other than that. It was done quite quickly based on the story and what the story's needs were. And the story, I wanted to have this new version, a new ship, to be 30 years newer than any of the other ships. So it had to be like the next step forward. And also what the economy would be able to produce is just this one type of ship and lots of them. And so what went into that design, it then sat for quite a bit of time while I did other things. Now, as to how many parts or kits I buy, I actually don't need to buy any kits. At the time, I stocked up on model parts back 10 years ago. And at the time, as to how I choose parts for kits, usually while I'm sorting parts in my garage, I usually run across boxes of parts and start looking at them and going, that right there would be perfect for that ship, or that would be perfect for that model. And the parts sort of get divided then, almost 10 years ago. That's how far it goes back. The engines on this model were basically an old stereo, an old Marantz stereo that had these nice parts on the sides. And I thought those would be excellent for engines, and that's literally 10 years ago how far back that went. But as the model progressed, I immediately downsized the hangar bay. It just became apparent immediately that it wasn't necessary to have a large hangar bay, just something to launch a small scout craft. And also, as I went forward, I immediately added 2 new engines under the wings, which wasn't part of the original design. So it changed the profile of the model. But I just wanted it to make it look meaner, faster, more maneuverable. And basically, through the laws of parsimony, its design is simplistic in the sense that it's a flying gun mounted under a flying wing. And the wing, in the universe I've created, the wings serve as shield emitters. So that's what went into the design. And then the whole back of the model literally has one gigantic shield generator that runs the length of the back of the wings. And then it required, because of the design, I thought it would look nice with an extra emitter mounted on the bottom of the ship, which is a fin that mounts on the bottom to help wrap the ship in a most ridiculously strong shield, making the ship incredibly, almost immortal as to how well it could do. And then mounting 2 massive guns, top and bottom, which are the bottom is based on as an ion cannon, as for the star drive, but I wanted engines under the wings so it could have reverse thrusters and just be this highly powerful, highly maneuverable warship to be compact and fly in packs, in wolf packs. That 3 of these ships or 2 would patrol and be more than enough to deal with anything. So that's what went into the design. And as for the parts I use, since all the models are in a specific fleet, I try to match those parts from other models. And normally when I collect kits, I usually buy them and I try to get at least 5 to 6 kits of the same kit. So if I find a part I like using, I can replicate it and use it everywhere. Yes, it'd be better to cast some of the parts, but at this case it just wasn't going that direction. It's usually not how I work. I usually just assemble all the parts in sufficient quantities. But here, as I got into it and was doing these shots, I realized that the hangar bay didn't have enough definition. Just having a little printout, when the light hit it just right, it really didn't work for me. So I knew I'd have to go back in and at least fix the door on the inner hangar bay to add a little definition, which I've included in a little time-lapse of the little extra work that went into it. Gosh, I'm trying to remember all the other questions that were on this model. How do I decide the parts I'm going to use? It's simple. I can see the model already finished in my mind, and this just required a rough sketch of roughing out the top of the model, which was probably done in an afternoon. And then from there, doing a couple other rough sketches of how I wanted the engines to be mounted, to basically add to the design. Remember, it was done in the 90s, and when I decided I was going to finally build it, also went into it is unlike most of my models that have trap doors everywhere, this would be a wire model. And that was mainly because of money. To build a framework inside to be strong enough to mount a pipe or a rod would have actually drove the cost up. I would have had to have bought aluminum or plexiglass or something to make a more rigid inside. And it wouldn't be cost effective. It was going to be easier just to build the piece and then try to creatively hang it with a fishing line to try to basically hide the fishing line as best as I can, and then correct anything else behind the scenes. But there's the little bottom shield emitter that unscrews. That originally was where a pipe was going to go, but the unique design of the model made it very hard to actually mount a rig to it. Trying to basically keep it as a wire model, the same way the models were done in Space 1999 were wire models. And the most difficult part is when you hang the model, you have to paint the wires to match the background in most cases, and it's really time consuming for every shot. But again, this model really didn't cost anything to build other than glue and the time it took, which is about 7 months. Took an afternoon to do some rough sketches when I figured out the design, located all the parts I was going to use, and literally took an afternoon of rough drawing to start this 7-month project, which took 7 months to do. I hope you enjoy the look of it. Now here's redoing the hangar door. I figured the simplest thing to do would be just to cut out the door, put it behind some black coreboard, and then just put another print over the top of it just to add enough to it, to the design, and then just slide it into the back of the model, which is actually a lot harder to do after the fact. But there's a little bit of what went into that, and it came out quite well. It just added just enough definition, and I could have taken it farther, but again, there's a lot of time that's already gone into the model. The model was 7 months old, and I just got done shooting all that, and before I shot the green screen work, I really wanted to redo that hangar door really quick. And now you'll get to see what goes into just shooting some simple green screen. Welcome to the green screen shoot. This is surprisingly a lot harder than it looks. You have to have a space, and remember, you're never ever going to have everything you need to do the job you want. In most cases, you'll have to just make do with what you have and try to put everything you can into it. Yes, the model sits too close to a background. Yes, that creates a problem where the green screen actually reflects onto the model. But since it was a wireframe model, I couldn't hang it in too many places in my garage. Again, to do it, I would have had to have built a secondary. I would have had to have built a rig or something so I could have hung the model and moved it around better. But again, it's a lot of cases you're just using what you have. Now, sandbags, most important. 10-pound sandbag works great to hold your green screen curtain in place. Without sandbags, you shouldn't bother because everything will just tip over and fall. Now, for doing lights, I prefer a heavier sandbag. I found a 15-pound works great. It'll make the light rock steady and you'll be able to move it around. And one will do if you feed it through the inside. Anything heavier than that could actually bend your rigs and your light stands because they're somewhat inexpensive. And now my favorite thing to assemble, the 10-foot pole. Now this aluminum rod, you'll be very careful because you can knock everything over. But again, you'll never have enough room to do any of this. So you just have to basically make do the best you can with what you have. And again, I don't have enough sandbags. I wish I had more lighting. I wish I had more green screen curtains. But, it's my garage and, this is not the main thing I do, but it was enough that I, to try to show the model in some practical form and to document the models. Also, another thing, be aware of your surroundings. I don't know how many times I've kicked lights over, even with sandbags. But I actually kicked that light there, but the sandbag kept it in place. Now, I always put a green screen curtain on a chair. I try to, even though the floor is swept, I try to keep it as clean as possible so I'm not transporting more dirt into the curtain. Now, yes, there's tons of ways to try to flatten the curtain, but you have to remember, creases in it aren't as bad as you think. They're actually not that big a problem if the lighting is done right. However, you know, it would have been much better to have the model farther away from the green screen. And in that case, it would have been better to have two 10-foot green screens that I could have put in an angle to cover. Now, my garage is covered and filled with these giant, they're basically about 10-foot dowels, closet dowels. That what I've done is I've hung them on wire so I can hang them strategically on any of the rafters, so I can hang a secondary green screen curtain. And this green screen curtain is pretty good because it has these great little Velcro tabs that you can adjust, and this makes it, you know, easier to hang the green screen, you know, having better control on where to hang it. But again, the model is quite large, and because it's a wire model, there was no way to avoid having it too close to the background. So the best I could do here was put a secondary green screen on the side to cover some of the issues of running out of green screen, because then you're going to have to go in and mask out all those parts where the model flew past the green screen. But again, you're never going to have enough room and enough clamps. Another thing, clamps. Oh my God. You have to have clamps. That helps you straighten out the curtain. But then you'll find if you don't have enough clamps, the clamps will actually create more problems with your curtain. But again, I knew I was shooting the model up higher, so I didn't care about any creases at the bottom. Now, umbrellas. Having the reflective umbrellas with the black on the outside works great. If you keep light from reflecting back into your camera, you cut down on glare, and that makes for more sharper images. So that's what I'm using those black umbrellas for. However, I wish I had some different types of lighting to better light the green screen curtain more ambiently. But also with clamps, there are different types of clamps. Ones that will wrap around the poles perfectly for your green screen, but also some other clamps to pinch the green screen together. But again, creases aren't that big an issue when you're playing with the values, when you're turning the masking on. So that pretty much goes into it. Now here what I do is I hang the model using D-rings with fishing line. It's 50-pound test fishing line, and throughout my rafters are cable ties, nylon cable ties that I can just wire the model up, reach up and hook them in really quickly to the top. Again though, it's way too close to the green screen, causing that shadow, but if shot right and creatively, the shadow doesn't really appear to be that big of an issue. But again, thank you so much for watching this. I've included artwork of the decals. Thank you so very much. This is Lance Wolf.